The storm outside shook the aircraft with a violence that rattled trays, spilled drinks, and sent passengers clutching their seats in fear. But what no one realized in that moment was that their fate would soon rest in the hands of a woman who had been told her whole life she was not good enough. Sarah Lopez had always dreamed of sitting in the captain's chair, soaring above the clouds as a pilot, but at every stage of her journey, she faced walls built from bias. In flight school, an instructor told her, "You're smart, Sarah, but you don't have the presence of a pilot." Airline recruiters glanced at her resume and said, "We're not hiring attendants into the cockpit." Even among colleagues, whispers followed her. "Ambitious. Thinks she's better than us." So she compromised. She became a flight attendant, telling herself it was still a life in the skies, still close to the dream. But in quiet moments, when she strapped into the jump seat and watched the pilots work, her heart longed to prove what she already knew: she was born to fly. On that fateful day, she boarded what should have been just another routine flight, dressed neatly in her Navy uniform, her badge pinned with precision, her hair tied back as airline standards required. Passengers passed her with the same mix of politeness and condescension she had grown used to. A businessman muttered, "Coffee, tea, and smiles, that's all they're here for." Another passenger looked at her and asked, "So when will the real crew arrive?" Sarah forced her professional smile, but inside, each comment stung. She reminded herself that dignity meant never letting their doubts see her break. 2 hours into the flight, things began to unravel. The captain had looked pale since boarding, brushing off Sarah's quiet question with, "I'm fine, just tired." But mid-cruise he slumped forward, clutching his chest, gasping for air. The first officer tried to help, but turbulence struck, slamming him into the overhead panel with a sickening thud. Blood trickled down his forehead, his eyes rolling back. Suddenly, both men, the only trained pilots, were out of action. Alarm bells chimed in the cockpit, and the autopilot disengaged with a shrill tone. The aircraft began a slow, uncontrolled descent. In the cabin, oxygen masks dropped, passengers screamed, and chaos erupted. A trembling voice came over the intercom. "This is the lead flight attendant. Is there anyone on board with flying experience? Any pilot? Please identify yourself immediately." The words hung heavy in the cabin air. A man jumped up proudly, boasting of his hours on a home computer flight simulator. Another claimed he once sat in a private plane. Fear drove them to exaggerate, but Sarah knew the truth. None of them could really do it. She knew because she had been there, beside real pilots, learning silently, storing knowledge others thought she couldn't understand. Her heart pounded as she rose from her seat. A passenger sneered, "Sit down, you're just a stewardess." Another added, "This isn't a movie. Don't try to be a hero." Sarah ignored them. She walked steadily down the aisle toward the cockpit. "I can fly this plane," she declared, her voice steady but her hands trembling. Disbelief rippled through the passengers. Some shouted encouragement, others called her reckless. But Sarah knew this was the moment she had been preparing for, even if the world never realized it. Inside the cockpit, the sight was grim. The captain was unconscious, the first officer barely responsive, and warning lights blinked angrily across the panels. Sarah slid into the captain's chair, fastening the harness, her body trembling with adrenaline. The radio crackled. "Delta 472, do you copy? We've lost your altitude reading. Please respond." She picked up the headset. "This is Sarah Lopez, flight attendant. Both pilots are incapacitated. I am taking command of this aircraft." Silence followed, then a voice heavy with doubt. "Did you say flight attendant?" Sarah clenched her jaw. "Yes. And unless someone else can fly, I am the only hope these people have. Guide me." On the ground, controllers scrambled to provide vectors, but doubt lingered in every word they spoke. It was the same tone Sarah had heard all her life, the sound of people who could not believe she belonged. But she tuned it out, her eyes scanning the instruments, her hands moving with a muscle memory born from years of stolen moments of learning. She leveled the wings, stabilized the descent, and set a course toward the nearest airport. The cabin behind her was filled with whispers, some supportive, some hostile. A group of men argued that she should step aside for this simulator guy. One even tried to approach the cockpit, but was stopped by crew. Sarah forced herself to focus. The plane's hydraulics were weakening. The weather outside worsened, thunderclouds flashing, wind buffeting the fuselage. At 20 minutes from landing, a warning light flashed. Fuel imbalance. She rerouted flow manually, recalling procedures she had memorized long ago but never had the chance to prove. As the airport finally appeared through sheets of rain, Sarah felt her breath catch. This was it. The runway was short, the winds fierce, and she had one engine running erratically. At 1,000 feet, alarms screamed. Wind shear! Wind shear! The plane lurched violently, passengers screamed again, and for one terrifying moment, Sarah almost lost control. But she remembered her instructor's cruel words years ago. "You'll never handle real pressure." She whispered back, "Watch me." Hands firm, eyes burning with focus, she fought the crosswinds, balancing thrust, rudder, and yoke with every ounce of strength. At 200 feet, the runway lights cut through the storm, and she lined up. At 100, she flared, the ground rushing toward them. The wheels slammed into the wet runway, bounced, then gripped. The aircraft screeched, hydroplaned, then slowed. Smoke rose from the brakes, but they were on the ground. Alive. Safe. Silence filled the cabin before it erupted into cheers, sobs, and applause. Sarah sat frozen, her knuckles white on the controls, tears stinging her eyes. She had done it. She, the woman told she wasn't good enough, had landed the plane alone. Hours later, as passengers recounted the story to waiting reporters, headlines flashed across screens. Flight attendant lands aircraft, saves 200 lives. Some called her a miracle worker, others a hero. But for Sarah, the true victory was deeper. She thought of every rejection, every insult, every time she was told to stay in her place. In that cockpit, in the storm, she proved not only to them but to herself that skill has no gender, courage has no rank, and greatness often comes from the most underestimated places. This story, brought to you by Inspire Now, is not just about one woman's triumph in the sky. It is about what happens when resilience meets opportunity. Sarah Lopez's journey teaches us that when life tries to tell you you're not good enough, you must answer with action, not words. She showed that discrimination can push someone down, but it cannot stop destiny when determination burns bright. And so, the next time the world doubts you, remember Sarah at 30,000 feet, alone in the cockpit, proving that courage is the best reply to prejudice.